Hello, everyone. Welcome to Caster Calls episode 55. I am here with Brittany Johnson. If I didn't incorrectly say that, that was a,
That was
a good
perfect.
guess. Yeah, welcome to Caster Calls. Pleasure to have you. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I this is really exciting. I'm glad you reached out to me. Anything that I think really spreads knowledge about our space is really cool to be a part of. So, yeah, thanks.
Great. Well, I think that, as usual, we'll start off with your introduction into esports and general video games as well. Maybe a brief overview of what you do now, and then maybe we can get into the details, their history as well.
Yes. I do. I think it gets really complicated slash very unique path. Which is hard to talk about and to lend advice to just because I kind of came in stumbling into it. What I do now, I'm building my own company at this point. I'm building my own company at this point, and I still do a lot of voiceovers and hosting. But I've definitely spent a lot of time on the business side of things and the talent side of things. So I would say ultimately I started out as talent, and that's where it kind of all snowballed from.
Okay. All right then. And then where did you have a particular start? Like, do you remember your first gig?
Yes, I mean, well, my first gig, I would say, was when I was in college. I landed the role of Angel in Borderlands,
Hmm.
and that I had no idea what that was going to catapult me into. I was going to school for something totally different, completed school for something totally different, and it still really wasn't until Borderlands 2 when I was like, you know what, maybe let me give this a shot for a little bit. So moved out to LA, was doing a lot of on-camera work. Borderlands 2 press junkets because it was releasing that fall. And just through meeting a lot of people and being a guest on a lot of shows, I ended up being invited back to being a guest again. And then that's what really started my hosting career in gaming. And that was 2012. So esports happened soon after that. Just because I am a gamer. I grew up gaming. I loved watching. I grew up going to QuakeCon a lot, so I had just like this interest in it, but I didn't really ever know it was a career path. And so, once I started making my way into that scene, my background's also, in college when I was doing Borderlands at the same time, I was working for Red Bull, I was working for NFL. My degree is in something totally different. I had more of like a business background, so I knew I wanted to be involved on the business side, not just talent. So I started consulting at the same time that I was doing a lot of esports hosting, gaming hosting, and worked with different developers, publishers, brands, and how they can navigate the gaming space with their marketing budgets, or doing a lot of influencer marketing as well. So what it ended up just becoming was talent strategy. And at the same time, I was juggling a full-time voiceover hosting on camera casting career.
Hmm.
And at one point it was just full-fledged esports. And so I think I've always loved both sides of it. And when people told me I had to choose, I said no over my dead body. Like, I can do both for as long as I am able to do both. And once one really starts taking over the other, then that's when I'll make that choice. But until then, I can do it. I'm sorry. No, you can probably hear the helicopter going around. I live in a loud neighborhood. Um, but yeah, I think on the business side, I got picked up. I would work instance for larger brands. I was working for the Lawbreakers launch, and then I got brought in to be the director of league operations um, for the World Series of Esports that was filmed out of Vegas, and so building out what that looks like. And that was kind of the PUBG era, and then realized, it's really cool to have that outlook on things. That like checking that off the box, like I understand how tournament organizing works now. I'm cool. So after I did that and completed that contract, I was like on to the next. Wanted to go back into talent strategy. And then that's when I got plucked by G2 Esports to be their head of creators, and I did that for 2.5 years.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot of things to break down, I guess. Then
Mhm.
a lot more of the basically behind the scenes than I would talk to about a lot of the people who are on my podcast. So first and foremost, what was the phrase that you used? Talent.
Talent strategy.
Talent strategy. Okay. Can you actually
Mhm.
kind of describe what that is?
Yeah, and so I guess this can be forwarded to what I'm doing now. I as I'm building the company I'm about to launch, I've still been doing a lot of talent strategy consulting. So when you look at G2 Esports or any org that I've worked with, it's how they're navigating a different industry than what their main core focus is. So, looking at G2 Esports where they've been, super successful in the competitive scene, and they want to kind of navigate and go into entertainment, into merch, into creators, how to manage their current roster, who to bring in that fits the brand, and what that trajectory looks like. So it's
Hmm.
building out more so like that business plan behind it, and not necessarily the talent management, but how does this all fit into what our plan is and where
Hmm.
we see ourselves in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's the same thing that happens with, you can kind of take that model and use that for like marketing agencies, brand agencies, PR companies, um, you know, uh, brands. I'm trying to think, there's that's become such a bigger thing now that the like influencer
Hmm.
and creator scene has just blown up over the past couple years.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So
Mhm.
very like overarching like vision
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Okay.
bigger picture of why are we spending this money and doing what we're doing.
Yeah, that's actually an answer I would love to hear. Sometimes when it
Yeah.
comes to esports, uh, sometimes the bag,
It's controversial because it works for some orgs and it doesn't work for others.
right? Yeah.
So, it just really depends on the team you have behind it
Mm,
first and foremost.
okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, so going back to like a couple of your first gigs, you mentioned the Borderlands. Like when was this? I don't remember when it came out. Sorry.
It was like Borderlands, we started working on it, I think,
Oh
2009.
wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
you're
was
very
I
much
was
into
a
like the
baby.
video game scene, and
Mhm.
I guess like general video game things, and obviously doing the voiceovers. You said that you weren't really doing that in university. That you kind of like, I mean, how did that happen then? Like, it's to have such a, I guess, what seems to be a big role, right? But you weren't really an experienced voice actress at the time.
I was super lucky. I cannot count my blessings enough for that opportunity because I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for that. I My friends knew I was a big gamer. They sent me this. Back then everything was on Facebook, but it was pretty much like a flyer that was like be in a video game, and it was an open call. I like went to this open call, had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to rush through it. I was like, what am I here for? What is this? What student project is this? Because it happened at SMU Guildhall, so I was like, oh geez, what am I getting myself into? I remember wanting to go to a movie afterwards and being like, come on, guys. And I think and maybe that, I'm not saying do this, but I think that like helped a lot because they were like, who's this girl? Yeah. And so we kind of hit it off, and then they called me back for a callback where they were like, I went through different phases of that where they, were narrowing down options, and I ended up getting it. And so because I did not have that experience, they really did invest in me in like proper training and stuff. So like
Wow.
I after school every day I was driving to Gearbox, and I'd worked with the script writers, I'd work with kind of a coach, and so whenever we were actually ready to film, I would be ready for something like that and not just like, walk into a booth and not have any idea what I was doing.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing actually. So I've done a little bit of dabbling into voiceovers and voice acting, like I think many people have in this
Mhm.
space. Um, and I kind of had no idea that was. I guess if you had told me this, like, is it possible? I would have said, yeah, I guess it's possible, but it sounds extremely unlikely, right? Pluck someone off the street and then be the person who gives them all the coaching. But I think that's even happening in esports to a certain degree. I feel like there's a lot more open calls for esports commentators that they're really just like, yeah, if you aren't experienced don't worry about it, and then they are investing into a little bit of the education
More
program.
development,
Yeah,
yeah.
which I mean is
Mhm.
obviously awesome, but just not how you think it's supposed to go, right? I mean, we hear a lot about the lucky breaks in a lot of industries, certainly freelance industries, but that's usually after years of like unpaid work, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we can definitely get into that when I talk about the website I'm building, because that stems from a lot of that.
Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, we'll definitely get into it. Trying to keep
Mhm,
things a little bit chronological, I suppose, though.
mhm.
So you do this and it kind of opens up the world into, I guess, like on camera work as well. So that's obviously, technically off camera, but you've done tons of work. I was looking up Twitter and whatnot,
Mhm.
that is on camera at this point. Some really fancy looking stuff. So that opened up the world for you, or did you still find yourself kind of a small fish in a big pond?
I still found myself a small fish in a big pond. At that point, that was in the era of like Maker and Machinima, and
Hmm, yeah.
when when it was less about content creators and more about hosts.
Mhm.
And so you had more opportunity actually back then.
Interesting.
How there were more opportunities, but there was a larger pool of talent. In a different way. Like it was more talent who had very similar skills as you, like, who could read a teleprompter, who can look at a camera. But this was also different than shoutcasting and any of that. Like this is more gaming news era, when that was like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
G4 was a thing before they went on their break and came back. And so I think that those were the glory days of being a host, to be honest.
Huh.
And then now it's swapped from gaming news into more like esports type hosting. So what's you when you're able to do desk hosting, stage
Mhm.
hosting, it's become more like sports, esport, or ESPN type stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I moved out to LA, and because I had Borderlands, it got me in the door for a lot of things, but it was still very competitive. And I still had a lot of work to do because I didn't have that experience. So it was a lot of small jobs. It was a lot of jobs that were for free or super cheap, just to be able to like build the relationship with that brand or that, you know, media company or whatever it was. And so, yeah, I mean, really it took until I got an agent that really helped me pursue some of the bigger things and kind of get on more people's radars.
Yeah. Okay, we'll
Mhm.
definitely talk about that as well. Kind of an emerging market, I suppose. More popular choice for a lot of people in esports now. But
Mhm.
you mentioned that hosting used to be more plentiful in the jobs. Kind of was more focused on, and I'd never thought of it in that way before. But as soon as you said it, it was like, yeah, it kind of made sense because I was certainly the person who loved watching G4. Absolutely loved
Mhm.
it. And yet it never really introduced me to esports, and I've always wondered kind of why, because there was competitive shows on there, but then I remember one of them was like it still was mostly this, I don't know, really like jacked guy who was hosting. It was still kind of his show, and all the players that were playing, I don't even remember what game it was at the time.
Mhm.
One of the Halos probably. They were like very much off to the side. Like they were there, but they weren't, what they are now, which is for a lot of esports, they're the real stars kind of thing. But yeah, there's like so many hosting roles and so many just general video game uh I guess hosting opportunities that came with it. Did you think that, I guess, that the space was actually populated by people who were into video games, or did you find that there was a lot of people that were coming in from purely the entertainment side who dabbled in video games?
I would say probably purely entertainment that dabbled in video games.
Hmm.
I think like us, like you and I, it seems like grew up with G4. I watching G4 at E3 was Christmas. I mean, I would just sit on my bed and watch literally from the morning until nighttime, until the next day, until that week was finished of content. And that's where all the big game releases were. And then you dreamt about going to E3 and like blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm gonna be a host on G4 one day, and I think because that's where all the production value was, and even if you looked at YouTube at that point too, kind of once G4 turned into cops reruns and everything kind of went more online. So like Machinima and the Maker days, it was more gaming news, and that's where announcements were starting to happen. And gaming reviews and more about personality.
Mhm.
And then the way that I think even kind of died off was that I mean it's hard because no one still has figured out how to bring back that original model of like why G4 was so successful back
Yeah.
then. I
Yeah.
mean G4 struggles with that now, and Vin had so much money and opportunity and still couldn't grasp that.
Mhm.
So everyone's still trying to crack that mold because there's nothing I want more than that. But right now, like, the reason why I don't think esports back then was as big visually was because it wasn't as sexy back then. Like the production of making the tournaments bigger and
Mhm.
prettier and like the stadiums that it would fill, that really didn't happen until later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think it just kind of naturally came with the evolution of esports and more interest coming into it that that's kind of the sway of where like hosting and casting and stuff went. And I think right now it's kind of like ebbing it kind of ebb and flows, and I feel like it's kind of coming back a little bit. There's more platforms that people digest information on, so there's a lot of more opportunities kind of popping up. But now rather than just having a pool of hosts, you have a pool of also content creators that are on Twitch and YouTube that are trying to do the same thing, so
Yeah.
it's getting a bit saturated.
Yeah, I can absolutely speak a lot to the development of esports as someone who's into StarCraft 2, which really ushered in with Twitch. It was a symbiotic relationship to the modern era of esports, and
Mhm.
certainly the idea of like content creation and players being able to stream and become little celebrities of their own helped make it so that players were actually somewhat interesting. Aside from was it Fatality is kind of one of the only people pre 2010 who outside of Korea anyways, really got
Mhm.
a lot of attention. And by the way, as far as the E3 thing goes, 100% agree. The biggest thing I miss from G4 actually, I miss icons. I freaking loved all the history shows, and I'm
Yeah.
really sad that they like I don't even know if people are really attempting to do like a very similar thing. So, yeah, I wish that would return. I'm like hopeful.
What I wish that G4 would have done when they came back was, and I think this is the argument for a lot of remakes. Um, just remake it the same but better. Like, we have the updated technology, we have the updated. Don't change it. Don't try to get weird with it. Don't try to how can we make this more modern? It
Right.
was
Yeah.
beautiful and amazing as it was. Just, do that but make it prettier.
Yeah, I agree. I 100%.
Mhm.
So anyways, like the hosting, obviously it's changed a lot, but at the time, you coming in as a little babby host, not an entertainer, but someone who's into video games. What were some of the big pains of learning, I suppose? Like, do you remember working with the camera for one of your first gigs? Do you remember like trying to pose and did you have like the whole what do I do with my hands kind of
Uh,
dilemmas?
I think what was harder for me was, I came from working with scripts.
Hmm.
So for me, it was always easier to work with a script rather than, you know, being able to improv or being able to, just have notes in my brain and hit the pulses and just be able to verbalize all of that information onto camera and not be also thinking about how I look and what I'm doing at the same time, and like the in-ear producer, that took me a long time to get used to.
Hmm.
So for me, like there's a lot of stuff I would pass on if it just I was like, I just want to look at a camera, read a teleprompter, and be comfortable and like know it's like have that I have a safety net. And it's very different the type of content you're doing when that's the case.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I took a lot of improv classes to
Hmm.
help and that really, 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 really like that changed everything when it came to interviewing and to just having a conversation with a co-host. I think that probably was the most beneficial thing I could have done
Mm.
for my career. So like improv definitely helped a lot. I did groundlings in LA and I'm very, very thankful for that.
I do think that's a shared sentiment across many people that I've talked to who've gotten into it anyways.
Mhm.
And then even people who haven't, I think, all agree that it's probably something they should get into. When did you? Were there anything in particular that you can think of when it came to those improv classes that you were able to directly kind of like take and put in the show, or did you feel like there was a certain point as to when you started to get better? I guess because of the classes.
I think it really came to learning how to guide the conversation, because that is something that you learn how to do in improv. And I mean, it's almost like now that I've done the improv, it's so common sense. But like the not shutting down the conversation on accident, like being able to guide it and saying yes and
Yep.
and being able to if you're having someone who you're struggling with, being able to pull those answers out, and that was something that I think made a clear difference in my style,
Hmm.
and what I was capable of doing afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it even helped whenever I'm doing, like voiceovers and acting and on camera, like scripted work as well. So, I and in everyday life too, in just in conversations, like when I took an improv class, I was in there with a bunch of people who are lawyers. It was actually the people who are in there as actors or entertainers was less than the amount of people who are in there for business or lawyers.
Wow.
And I asked them about it, and they were like, "Yeah, our it's kind of like an extra credit thing for the law firm we work at because it definitely helps when we're doing our depositions and stuff like that." And I was like, "That's freaking cool."
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense to, I guess when you say it, anyone who's, I guess, into public speaking to any type of degree, I gotta imagine it
Mhm.
would help teachers as well, and
Oh
all that
yeah.
type of stuff. This is absolutely not what you think of initially. For me, I absolutely think of people who are, yeah, theater kids, I guess,
Yeah, yeah,
mostly.
yeah. And that's kind of what I was nervous going into. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna go in there with a bunch of tryhards who are actually good at this,"
Yeah.
and it was literally everyone on the same level, and that felt good. It felt good to kind of strip away all those insecurities and just be like, "All right, let's learn how to talk to each other."
Yeah, yeah. All right, so you're doing a lot of this, I guess, on camera work now.
Mhm.
The world is changing while you're doing this. Do you remember kind of the first time you did, like, I guess what it was, a pure esports event? If you have, I guess, done them.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What was my first one? It might have been Halo.
Yeah. Okay.
My first casting might have been Halo and Halo Wars.
Okay. So did you cast first and then got hosting jobs at, like, later?
Well, it was hosting, and then I think someone was like, "Hey, can you cast too?" And it was kind of one of those moments where I was like, "Sure, I'll
Sure.
try." Um, and I definitely have things I like and things I don't like, and one thing I did learn is don't attempt to cast or really get involved. Like I think you learn too how picky the communities are, and
Mm,
so it's like don't bite off more you can chew if it's going to show off or if it's going to come across as ingenuine.
okay. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Well, I think of Halo fans. They're quite
Yeah,
a
I
dedicated
was lucky with
bunch.
Halo. I think I went in there being like, "Hi, I'm new to this," and they were like, "Okay,"
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't trying to be like fake or any like I know what I'm
Sure.
talking about. Yeah, which
Mhm.
also gives you a lot of credit. I think owning don't the biggest failures I've seen with talent is when they feel like they've become untouchable. Um, and I think you can always learn something. You can always, show some humility and like if you own up to that type of if you don't try to come off as like I'm the best in the fucking world, then people even the people watching it see that even the people who love the game are like okay yeah you're making mistakes but whatever you
Right.
know
Yeah. Did you ever get concerned though? I guess through all the, I don't know how long you've, like, stayed in a game. I guess how you would say that. But you
hmm
ever concerned about never being able to develop a like a attachment, like a homegrown appeal? Like, were you ever afraid of just constantly being viewed as the fleeting person who just came and went, and then people would just not appreciate you as much?
I think no. But I know that everyone's different because I know there's people who are like, I really want to get into the Call of Duty scene and I want that to be my focus. And I really want to grow that community. And I mean, it definitely helps with the growth of your brand as well when you do something like that. But I've always been okay kind of being like the substitute. And that to me is okay because I like doing general gaming and I like doing esports, but and I always like I'm open to it if that conversation happens, if there is a community that I kind of really vibed with well and fell in love with, and there was a title where even like the tournament organizers, developers were like, yeah, we kind of want you to be our traveling stage host or whatever. I did that for a little bit with League,
Oh, okay.
and I liked it. I liked it a lot, more on the amateur level, and it was fun. But I felt like I didn't feel guilty for going off and doing other things. And that's what I really like to do is I have fun dabbling.
Hmm.
And so, but I see both sides of it, I'm I think I'm just kind of that type of person.
Hmm. And when it came to, having all these fingers and all these pies, like, how did you do prep? What were you mainly focused on when you got a new gig and you were like, "Hey, I have this much." I don't know how much time they usually give you, but this much time to
Yeah,
to
a
work on
lot
it.
of times it was not enough prep time. But I definitely go and try to play the game a bit. But more importantly, watch past broadcasts. I think watching past broadcasts has helped me more so than playing the game itself. That sounds terrible. Like, I mean, I play a lot of games anyways, but I learned more about kind of what people like to hear and see about, when watching past tournaments or past seasons than going through it and just becoming like super familiar with like the gameplay and all of that, which
Hmm.
I mean, you need to do both. You need to sit there and go through like the weapons and the blah, 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 like get into it. But like when you don't have that much time, like I've done things where they're like, we need you for something this weekend, but like you're going to be in China, so you need to leave tomorrow, and you have like 2 days of travel days, so you don't have time to sit and play the game. So I would just sit and watch past broadcasts as much as I can, and read articles and
Interesting.
get into Reddit and all that stuff. So I've had both situations, and do I prefer one? Yes, I prefer to be able to be as knowledgeable as possible, but you're always thrown into situations you don't have any control over.
Yeah. And when you get there, how is the interaction with the people that you're working with then? Do you make it a point to go out and hang with them? Is this where you get really kind of your more details is by talking to, I guess, the analysts or the casters that are going to be there? Or is it mostly you kind of segment it off because you're the last second host replacement?
No, I mean, I've never been on a project where I feel like I've been kind of isolated because I was like thrown in the last minute. At no point has that been the case. I
Hmm.
feel like for the most part, everyone's working together to prep for it anyways. If anything, I'm the one who's like, let's go out and get drinks. And like I'll get to know each other and icebreakers, I'm like, who wants to get dinner? Um, so I am probably the worst person to throw into that mix because I'm there. What One of the things I think I love the most is and one of the things I preach is like, don't just go in and be all about like you and your job and what you're doing. Like, take the time to also get to know the talent, take the time to
Mm.
also get to know the production, because when there's those last minute curveballs or whatever, those are the people who are going to help you. So it's not even just like, hey, like let's prep by going over like people who are like the athletes. Let's not prep just on like going over the teams that are in it right now, but also just spending that time with them and breaking down that wall helps in the communication during the production.
Great. Yeah, I think that's something I think that other hosts, especially, have mentioned is that they make sure to be friendly with everyone. Obviously, a lot of the
Mhm.
chemistry that happens on the desk and all that, but then also the production, so that they get to know you, but then also that they actually like you,
Mhm.
so that they're willing to help you out a little bit more. Can be extremely beneficial, but it is interesting to hear this from the perspective of a host. I've done like a little bit of hosting, but still in StarCraft, so I still don't feel like I've done the like here I am, like let's go thing.
Yeah.
I still know so much about it. But when I talk to other hosts, they have such a I guess a focus on what you're talking about as well. Personally, I
Mhm.
think though for my scene, and you already mentioned that scenes can be so different, is that I do think that if you were to come and hang out with StarCraft people, because we're the coolest, we all have been very like that's it's the lesson that I was taught by a commentator before me, and I've taught the commentators coming up. But like, yeah, go out to the hotel bar, like have some drinks, be chill.
Yeah. Well, and like you also it's not worth it to ostracize or be mean or to disregard someone just because it might be the one job you work with them and you might not ever see them again, because you also don't ever know when you're going to see them again. And even if you are not the the number one go-to person for that job, that production you might work with a producer that is like, that person was so much fun to work with, let's work with them again. So like, everything leads somewhere, and you just want to, I think it's really important to have that reputation. And like I said earlier, like don't come across and don't feel untouchable, because no one in this industry is untouchable.
Yeah, and I take that and run with it. You're now working so many. I guess you've worked on so many behind the scenes projects. You've had this great overview of esports from I guess even looking at kind of its past as well. And now you're going to be working on it's pronounced Tavern. Am I getting that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, good. I got it. I got what you were going for there.
Thank you.
The tavern of all the esports people coming in. It's nice. So when you looked at like everything, can you tell us, I guess, what is another mistake that a lot of the talent makes? What do you see kind of pervasive in the industry as it is for esports right now that holds talent back?
And I think it's something we touched on earlier, is investing too much into one title. That
Oh yeah. Okay.
whenever that kind of falls off, you are stuck at square one trying to do all the amateur events to build yourself up as a name in a different title. I think it is good to diversify your knowledge and what games you can stream and can work in. Even if most of your time is in one title, you're capable and able to do other ones. Whereas like, a lot of people really said Overwatch is my thing and it will forever be my thing and I will be known as the Overwatch person. And then Overwatch dies and they cut budgets and blah blah blah. And then you're stuck being like, hey guys, I'm still a good host, but like what should I host? And now you're stuck doing the amateur tournaments for Valorant, trying to work yourself up in that scene because there's no money anymore in what you were working in before.
Yes, yes, very near and dear to my heart right now. StarCraft, especially because StarCraft was it still kind of is, but we were definitely one of the worst esports when it came to the community's feeling of betrayal if you did do something else.
Yeah.
It's better now,
Well, I
but
think it's because it's such a legacy there,
yeah, for sure.
like StarCraft is one of the ones that's, I can see how like that, and like Dota too, how people are like, how dare you leave? But
Yes, yes, yeah.
yeah, like, but you don't see that really in other titles though,
hmm Yeah, I
um
think so. I think talking to other people, there's a lot more of that. I like they're very in tune with the idea that yeah, there might not be a tomorrow here,
mhm,
which is just the unfortunate uh, problem that esports is going to have for a very very long time,
yeah.
and that they're very much willing to go out and about. But then I've also heard that I guess so that's your like the biggest problem that you see that's really keeping talent back. What do you think about when it comes to kind of general branding then, right? So it is maybe almost easier to say I am the Overwatch person. Like this is my brand. This is what I do. So you stream
Mm.
it, you make YouTube content, you cast it, whatever you do. Um, do you think that it is easier? Maybe that's one of the reasons amongst many that they're doing this. Or do you think that there is a lot to be said about making sure that your brand is kind of all encompassing? And do you think that talent are even really thinking about brands? Because I bring it up on the podcast, and a lot of people are
Mhm.
just like, "Oh, I just kind of do things." So do you think it's like unappreciated right now?
Here is it's so weird because how I was saying there's an ebb and flow there. This kind of falls into that where um, it is a lot easier to get noticed and to get work when you have a larger following.
hmm
So how do you build that larger following without really diving in and growing like that following in a particular community?
hmm
But then you go and work on different titles, and that following's like, wait, I'm not interested in Rocket League or Starcraft person. Like I don't. That's not my thing, and like the following doesn't really follow you.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's important to diversify. It's important to I okay. I'm trying to think of a really good example right now of someone who's doing this.
I'll try to think
Mm,
with you because I know it was
yeah,
it was a large question. I'm
it
asking you to
is. It
condense.
is. Yeah, and my following comes from Borderlands, so then it's easier for me to go off and do multiple things because Borderlands is just like, we love you, Angel, and like I'm like hosting a Halo thing, and they're like, cool,
Uh-huh, yeah.
Angel, so it's different, and I think of like Lawler actually does a really good
Uh-huh,
job at what
okay.
he does. And at first he was more diverse, and then really kind of jumped into to Rocket League,
Mhm.
and then started doing a lot of content around that. uh, and I think he's done a really good job at captivating that audience. And like right now he's riding that train, but then also he's able and capable of going off and doing other titles as well. Um, and oh, a really great example of this, Wave Punk. Wave
Mm,
Punk started off in Rocket League and then started doing Twitch Rivals, and because of Twitch Rivals, can literally go and do anything. And has it built up his following? Maybe. I think it has. I think it's definitely helped him. But it's the same in on camera work. Like you want to build your following, your brand, um, because especially if you're bigger, if you do invest in something like Rocket League, and let's say Rocket League tomorrow it just isn't a thing anymore, you at least have that platform to go and do something else with. So they
mhm.
might be hardcore Rocket League people, but you're hoping that they still love you because of who you are and your personality and your opinions and blah blah blah, so that they follow you. But there's no perfect algorithm to it. There's no rhyme or reason why certain things. And like, just because you have a big following doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get the job. They're still going to pick who's the better option, hopefully.
Mhm. And in your experience, actually, I think this is. I've heard a lot of answers from this one. I don't think anyone actually has the answer, but do you think that the amount of followers and like where the followers are, like which platform, like Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is, actually influences? I mean, can you give a percentage on how much it would influence you being hired, or at least your approachability, or you want to say your potential to be
Yes.
hired for other events?
Yes. So, I mean, every league and production company and brand or whatever will do their background work on you and go and like look at everything, make sure you're safe. Um, Twitter in our space is the biggest, clearly. It really doesn't matter for Instagram and TikTok, maybe a little bit TikTok more now. So,
Hmm.
but not for like really esports, I don't think. But Twitter is really important, um, in our industry for sure. I would say if it's a brand, my experience working with brands is they care more about how many people you have than necessarily your experience in that particular title or anything like that, and that is why you're seeing a lot more content creators who necessarily aren't like hosts and casters start doing things, because brands are like, oh, you have 100K followers, like great, because that's kind of their KPI. That's
Uh-huh.
um yeah, and that's unfortunate because someone like DreamHack or Blast isn't going to look at that.
Mm.
And Riot, they're not going to look at that. They're going to look at pure talent.
Mm.
But Red Bull will. Red Bull does care about the age demographics and blah 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 of who they're hiring. And but they're not going to tell you that. They're going to kind of make assumptions based off of like whatever research they can do off of just looking at your social media.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Because I think that's an important point to bring up because it's very easy to just say, like, well, for particular esports and especially like just pure, like again, like you said, DreamHack and Blast, they might be more talent focused or even want to put that more scene focused, community focused. But
Mhm.
Red Bull does come in to a lot of different scenes, and they're doing a lot of things that are very fun in a lot of different scenes. So to hear
Mhm.
that from my perspective, saying like, well, I talked to these guys and they're all like, yeah, well, they're not going to be paying attention to that and this and this and that. But there are going to be those times where there's going to be a big sponsor or a big organizer that come in and they're like, yeah, we understand that they're really great, but what about this person who has X amount? And you're absolutely right about the amount of content creators that are now becoming part of the show, which I think
Mhm.
I've seen some talent kind of push back on. I know that one big proponent, supporter of this, like you need to grow your Twitter, especially, is Shocks. I
Mhm.
think she's talked about it as well, and I've always wondered, how that actually does impact things. So you're adding to the pile of like, yes, it absolutely does matter.
It
Um,
absolutely does matter.
which I think comes from more of the people who have been in multiple places in esports, as well as just the times. I guess even 2 years into this podcast, things have changed a little bit.
Mhm.
But on that subject, just you mentioned that you said they're the safe. What exactly did you mean by that when people do their due diligence and see that you're safe?
I think it's one, brand safe, because a lot of people are going in and selling against the tournament, and that's really what keeps them alive. So if you're off starting trouble or anything, saying things you shouldn't on Twitter or even in your Twitch streams or um, TikTok, like they'll go into Facebook, like they'll go and make sure they'll go and even if maybe they'll look at Reddit as well to see if there's anything that's been bad on Reddit, but they want to make sure that brands aren't going to be upset working with you
Mm,
and that you're not a risk when it comes to like conversations that will piss someone off, because ultimately at the end of the day it's the brand that keeps the light on, not the people who are watching. So you, we gotta, they'll reputation's huge. So a lot of people also who decide that they're untouchable and want to start some drama, people will stay away from that because they're like, we don't want that around. We don't need our name in that light,
mhm.
even if it's not us, it's you. But like, don't want our name in your mouth at all.
Hey, I think it doesn't happen particularly quickly from what I've seen, or even
Hmm.
kind of like closely seen. But I'm thinking of bigger cases out in esports that I'm not involved in. But I feel like it doesn't happen immediately that you see that pushback from whatever
Hmm.
force it is when someone's being, let's say, super weird, or just super bad, or just super, just whatever, dramatic.
Hmm.
But I do think you see it eventually, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes and unfortunately, sometimes you see it's when people kind of get cocky and say certain things on Twitter and responses and like try to present themselves in a certain way that can be a huge turnoff. But then also, people talk in the industry, and so if you're someone who people don't like working with, then it's going to be hard to get a job. And
Yes,
unfortunately, there's some bad seeds that still get jobs,
of
but
course.
I mean, karma comes back around.
Yeah, yeah. Which goes back to you're pointing out like you could be working with the same production crew for another totally different events. I think they also are very close knit from what I've seen.
Hmm.
Production crew will usually go and hang out with the production crew or other production crews at like a DreamHack that has like 5 different video games on.
Yeah,
So you better believe that if
and they
someone was really dramatic, it's coming around.
right, they all like go and work for the different tournaments and everything. So it's honestly like it's a big puzzle all the time, and the moving pieces are always working on different projects. And yeah, I mean, you see familiar faces all the time.
Yeah. So I guess for like the kind of the ending part of this podcast, I do want to focus on tavern, something that you're creating, and it sounds like you're very excited about and very proud of. So can you give us a summary of what that is, and also kind of specifically what the goal is for it?
Yeah. Okay. So tavern, if I can just do the okay, one, the tavern, the name is like the tavern in like World of Warcraft, or the inn, or where you go to get your mission and to find your team. I wanted something very comfortable, and it is just that. So it is pretty much a marketplace for on-camera talent in gaming and esports and entertainment. What this came from is exactly what we've been talking about. There's no centralized place to go find work as talent. It's kind of a who you know, and hopefully you built those relationships up, and hopefully when there's a new job, they call you up. And if you or you have to follow the right person on Twitter and just hope you're the first person that responds to that. Hey, is anyone available for this tweet? And that's not how it should be. That's not how it is in film and TV. Film and TV, they have casting boards and websites where talent and agents go and submit themselves to work, and that's how you build your resume. And right now it's the Wild West. So I was frustrated as talent myself, um, you know, with my career always being in the hands of someone else. And if I had a free Thursday, like I was like, I want to be able to do more work. Or on the hiring side, if you're like, say, I want to go hire Golden Boy for a job. Oh, Golden Boy is booked up for the next 4 months. And then you sit there and you're like, oh, what do I, like, who else who should we pick? And so there's not a place to build that pool of talent or diversity really, and to be able to find maybe new diamonds in the rough that you want to bring in and give opportunity to new talent, and not just use the same group of people all the time. So there was one day I was on a panel during the pandemic, and someone asked, like, hi, I really want to, like, first and foremost, be a host. And right now I'm trying to just build my career as a content creator, but like, that's the goal. But I don't even know where to go and find the work to be a host. And I know I'm not, I can't get an agent yet, but I don't even know where to go to build the talent, to build the resume, to get the talent agent to submit me to more jobs. And I was just like, holy crap, you're right. Because I don't have my story is so unique. I just kind of stumbled into it, as I said before. There is no place for new talent. And so that's what Tavern will be. A lot of these companies, a lot of these, whether you're a marketing agency, whether you're a brand, whether you are a tournament organizer or publisher or developer, and you have either a gaming news show, you have a tournament that's coming up, you have a series that's coming up, voiceover, whatever it is a place where you can go and say, hey, talent, submit yourself to this. And talent can go submit to it so that you have an actual inclusive pool to choose from.
Which is a awesome initiative and idea. I guess to actually ask some detailed questions about it. Do you think that anyone has ever tried this? Have you looked at maybe something that is related closely to it? I know you brought up like mainstream industry type of situation that can kind of learn from that
Mm-hmm.
you've witnessed, and like what are the the lessons that you've learned, I guess, so far, kind of getting into that space and trying to develop this organization, common meeting place, everyone okay it.
Yeah. So it exists in film and TV.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been opportunities for gaming, like hosts and commercials and stuff that go through some of those sites. However, the thing that stinks about using that is that you're stuck with, there might be hundreds of us in esports and gaming in particular. Let's like even bring the niche a little bit smaller, that are looking for gaming work. Whenever you put a job posting on those sites, you are putting it out to the world of everyone who wants to be an actor, and like just want any job possible. And so you get thousands of people who apply to your job who are like, I've played Mario Kart once, and you're like, this is a Halo post. I don't like you. And so it that broadens a little bit too much. So it's not necessarily a competition. And to be honest, for sites like that, our niche is a piece of the pie, like a smaller piece of their pie.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really something to help elevate our industry in particular. And there is nothing like it in our industry. You can say like Hitmarker or Twitter, but that's your Twitter is my biggest competitor. And that's silly to say, and it's not even a competition. Like Twitter would
Yeah.
be like, what, saying that, And so, yeah, it's more so like, what if I wanted to scale, how would it scale, which was, what we're working on, because it could be bigger production wise as well, like photographers, videographers, script writers, observers, admins, like that type of stuff as well. But really the focus is on camera talent.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, very specific. Well, not very specific, but yeah, definitely good to narrow the pool. And then I guess from your perspective then, do you see the future looking more like the entertainment industry, at least when it comes to this market, right? Like the whole, even, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Actually having people try out, audition. That's the word I'm looking for.
Audition, yeah.
Yes, that there's even going to be more audition based like hirings in esports in the
Hmm.
future.
Um, yes, maybe not so much in certain roles. You
Hmm.
know, I don't casting and shoutcasting, color commentary, that type of stuff. It might just be more like show us your reel. You know, hosting. There's still a lot of auditions that happen for. I feel like hosting, less stage hosting and more so like production, broadcast, that type of
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
I can see that getting, you know, general question, is it becoming more like general entertainment? Yes. I mean, we're already seeing the huge agencies move into the space.
Right.
You're already seeing kind of a more standardized rates, standardized like percentages that managers and agents take. Um, Whenever CAA, WME, and UTA joined into esports and took the interest of hosts and creators in that in this space, then that's whenever you started seeing change happen.
Sorry, what was that?
Like CAA, WME, UTA, those are the biggest agencies in the world
Oh, okay.
for talent. For like they're the people who represent like Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, you know, like those people.
Gotcha.
Um, and like those are kind of, once those agencies got the attention of gaming and esports, and then they started having gaming and esports departments and actually started representing talent, not only esports athletes and creators but also hosts, that's when things really started to change. And I feel like production ramped up, and it's now, you know, working for free is no longer okay.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of push, I think, in general esports
Yeah, there will
sphere
be no
not to do that.
free talent options on Tavern. I already put that on there. I'm like,
Oh,
you,
nice.
this is not a place to come if you're wanting free talent.
God, good, good, good. So that's fascinating. Actually, I don't know anything about that particular part of it. I don't know anything about the entertainment industry, to be honest. So when did you, do you know when that kind of happened? Are we talking like 2015, 2012, 2020?
No, I mean, because when I moved out to LA, I was having conversations with those bigger agencies about gaming and esports, and they were like, "That's cute." And then fast forward, a lot of my friends who are in the space are like, "Holy crap, you were onto something," and I was like, "Yeah," but it honestly, it took that time. It took
Hmm.
that time to grow. I think they got in at the right time, and this has really only been, I think, probably in the past four 4 5 4 years, maybe
Wow.
4 years.
Okay.
I mean, CAA, UTA, WME all have now full-fledged gaming departments and dedicated agents and everything, and they're the ones who are kind of bringing in the big eyeballs too, though. Like CAA packages a lot of deals for TV shows and like ESPN, and like they're the ones with those connections. These huge agencies bring in a lot of brands into the space as well. So as much as it's scary and everyone's like, "Oh no, it's going to be ruined because of all these people coming in," it's actually what's helped grow
Yeah.
the visibility of esports.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Again, you said it, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense that there'd be these like conglomerate type situations with
Hmm.
agencies. I just never would thought about it. Um, so this is also funny. You're talking about it. I was like, are we having a world where you're going to have people, especially I think the ones who are here now, a lot of them are going to have their history being, I was a shy nerd that stumbled into this over the last decade. Or we're going to have them moving more into the entertainment industry, because we had a lot of entertainment industry people move into video games,
Hmm.
maybe not even their ideal scenario, but it was a job, right? Or you think we're going to have
Yeah.
the other way
Uh,
around, where it's going to be all the shy nerds who weren't even into the industry, but now they're like, yeah, it's kind of what I do, like I'm on talent, on air talent.
Absolutely, I think so. I mean, you kind of already, you're seeing bigger opportunities come to personalities in the space, and even hosts. Like, let's look at Golden Boy. Like, his dream was to one day, and he was just like, it was like kind of a joke, but like his dream one day was to do wrestling. And he has gone on to
Yeah.
be a host for wrestling, and then he also had his show with The Rock.
Yeah, I did an ad
Uh,
with them. That was awesome.
yeah, and then you're seeing that too, like G4 getting heavily into the WWE, and um, there's more and more opportunities. I think it's easier for gaming talent to move into those other categories than those other categories to get into gaming. Like it's really hard for someone. You, I will take this back though, like NBA 2K, Madden, FIFA, like sideline reporters that work in that world can easily go in and work for FIFA tournaments and,
Oh.
and Madden and NBA 2K. And you see that there. I'm pretty sure there's an NBA 2K host that comes from like real like collegiate basketball broadcast and NBA broadcasts. So like in
Mhm.
that type of stuff, yes. But like, can they come in and do Valorant? No.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but then you know you're seeing more of a crossover, but it definitely leans to favor one side.
Yeah. And, I know it's kind of like jumping back way in time, but were you a shy nerd, growing up? Did you find yourself particularly outgoing and prepared to be on camera? Or did this kind of develop naturally through being interested in video games?
I think it developed naturally through interest in video games. I was a political science major, so I think I liked talking to people, I like
Mm,
being around people. Um, I think the maybe the thing I kept not quiet was like how much I played video games. I think only like my close friends really knew like that was my thing. Um, and yeah, I think maybe it's also what's helped me a lot. Like I've always been a good people person. I think I've one of my favorite things to do is to connect people. So like just from talking to someone and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll introduce you to this person, this person, this person, whatever. And that's definitely helped for
yeah.
sure. It won't serve you in this world to just sit quietly by yourself and hope that the work comes to you. You've got to put yourself out there.
Yes, that is certainly true.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then, I guess from one of my last questions, actually. So alongside signing up on Tavern, right?
Mhm.
Shout out for you. Aside from doing that, do you still like, the general advice here is to go to get an agent? Is that going to be the standard kind of path, progression for talent?
I mean, hopefully this serves that gray area is what I'm
Okay.
hoping Tavern does. But yes, I think there will be a certain point in your career where you have to get an agent. Um, that's how it is in entertainment. Like if you want to, you can go out there and work on a lot of indie films and like commercials and um, smaller voiceover gigs, smaller student films, but you're never going to get the opportunity to get your face or your foot in the door with feature films, with television shows, with like the big voiceover jobs, the big commercials. If you don't have someone opening that door for you and submitting you, and a lot of that is behind closed doors. Like the big auditions happen are not public, and so there's no way for you to access that unless you have an agent.
Hmm.
It will be that way too. There are a lot of opportunities that go straight to agents and aren't, thrown on Twitter and for people to actually submit themselves to. Those are usually the smaller jobs that you hope turns into something more.
Interesting. And how
Mhm.
do you go about getting an agent?
I think it's together a reel of what you've done, and don't be shy about knocking on doors and throwing it in people's faces. Like, I think there are a handful of agencies out there that handle on camera talent, specifically more endemic to gaming, and then entertainment as well. And I think it never hurts to ask because what's the worst thing that can happen is they say no, but like that doesn't stop you from having a career. Like you can just keep on working and keep on building your resume and keep on sending it out to certain people. I mean, you have to.
Yeah. So throw it at
Mhm.
people's faces through the doors. Got it.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the yeah, I've talked to a lot of people who, and I feel like half of them are pretty, kind of reserved. They understand how difficult it is to put yourself out there, and half of them are like, yeah, maybe I was, but I got over it. I still think it's really important. It's too important not to do. Can also be an answer. But there's one person in particular. I don't know if you know her, for Overwatch, Lemon Kiwi, And she was one of the only people I've ever talked to in 55 episodes and just general life, where she was just like, yeah, I just go up and ask. Like, I don't understand what's wrong with that. And I'm just like,
You
oh no, you don't
yeah,
understand.
you have to. You have to. You can't I that's kind of my mantra is like it doesn't hurt to ask.
Hmm. Yeah.
And especially if I see, so if I'm working on, if I see something I want to be working on, and I meet someone who kind of has some sort of attachment or connection to that, I will not be shy to say like, hey, if there's ever an opportunity, like please keep me in mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's all it really
And
takes too sometimes, right? I
yeah.
think there's a lot of problem with, you know, that the jobs aren't going to come to you, but then like you kind of still feel like that's still kind of the, especially in esports, it's still kind of the process that happens a lot of the time. But honestly, you know, I've gone from no one ever mentioning other video games to me at all to mentioning that I was interested in Valorant, and I did like a cast for it, and then suddenly it was like three different things, like Age of Empires and Valorant from a bigger, more
Mhm.
important person, industry, organization. And then CSGO was also something people were like, oh, you're interested in doing that? And I was just like, that's kind of all it took, weirdly enough. Not that I got a bunch of jobs, to be clear, but I suddenly was in the conversation, right? And all it was just being like, oh, you are interested in doing other things. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't assume, you can never assume uh, for someone to be interested in you. You know, like you have to be like, "Hi, I'm available."
Yeah.
Hey, like it's dating in esports and gaming. Like you're like, "I'm single, guys. I'm single." um, Not really, guys. Okay,
Well,
but
yeah.
but yeah, like you know, there's often times where you find yourself at the hotel bar having a conversation with someone who works for like at BlizzCon. I mean, I have gotten most of my work for the rest of the year by going to Irvine for BlizzCon and sitting at that hotel bar. Um, you know, and
That's
just the
awesome.
people that you meet talking who come around, um, and like, keeping in touch, following them, and just being like, hey, by the way, like really love the show or really love what you guys are doing. You know, this is something that I really want to do one day. So keep me in mind if there's ever an opportunity for, you know, something even if small. And you would be surprised how many people actually keep you in mind.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the fears is perhaps, I just speaking from personal experience and trying to
Mhm.
be not as shy, basically. I think part of the issue, though, is being wary of being that person who just says, you know, like to every person they meet, like, oh, I love to do that. I love to do that. I love to do that. Just basically seeing very non genuine. Uh,
No,
yeah, that type of
I
thing.
mean, yeah, I would say be genuine. There are there you can sense out desperateness
Yeah,
easily.
desperation.
You
Yeah.
know, um, desperation. Yeah, you can sense that out pretty easily if I think there is something to be genuine as if like you try to have a conversation with that person first. And if not, like there might be someone that like you follow on Twitter that follows you back and you've never had a conversation. You can kind of just be like, hey, just putting it out there, like sending a DM and you know introducing yourself. Um, you know, don't I would say like don't ever annoy someone.
Hmm.
Don't like you know just the one message being like, hey, you know, I'm here. Just wanted to let you know I'm here. But you know, whenever you're out at an event or something, when you're having a conversation with someone and you don't even maybe like you know who they are, but like you have that conversation with them first, that kind of builds some familiarity and
Yeah.
not even not friendship, but you know,
Yeah.
um, civilness that you can say like, by the way, you know, if it comes up in conversation or towards the end of the conversation, then that's going to feel genuine. It's not like the first thing you're spitting out at them whenever you meet them. So,
Yeah.
you know, or like you meet them and afterwards you send them a message saying like, you know, it was great meeting you. Hope you had a great BlizzCon. Hope you had a great TwitchCon. You know, oh you know that so happy I went to that happy hour at E3. It was great meeting you. Hope you had a great rest of your week. Just wanted to drop a note and say, like, you know, would love to work together at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very powerful thing. I think the follow up what it used
Mhm.
to be an email, now it's DM or Discord or whatever it is now, right?
Yeah.
But the follow up can be very important and just very, it's a very professional thing to do. Sometimes it's obviously very difficult to just sit here and try to explain social interactions to people, especially those who, struggle with social interactions. But I think intent does show through. So if your initial intention is to just kind of be friendly, have fun, talk about things that you like, and
Mhm.
on top of that, you're capable of putting on the big boy pants, right? Putting on suspenders and saying like, by the way, I think this would be really cool. Just if you've ever got an opening,
Mhm.
it is something that you like. A lot of people have to learn, myself included. But it is kind of eventually become very socially agile at it. I feel like
Yeah.
So I think that's just the best advice I could certainly give as someone who has had people come to me for advice or asking about jobs. Absolutely, I can always tell if their first instinct was to be cool, basically, or if their first instinct was to like, oh, okay, yeah, she's gonna get me a job, like let's go. So,
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah. You
good
I feel
advice.
like I can sniff out someone who's just trying to get information out of me versus like
Yeah.
someone who's just like genuine like, hey, like I admire kind of like what you've been doing and would love to work with you. There's a different, it's all in kind of the delivery.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
all in the delivery. And then just be genuine in this industry. It's such a small world still. Like it's big, it's growing, but it's still a small world. So
Hmm.
I think as long as you're kind and don't be competitive. That's something I have a conversation with hosts all
Oh.
the time, especially if wow, females in the space. As women have to really work together to to build each other up, and try to negate any toxicity that there is.
Hmm.
And so, like, whenever you hear about someone being terrible, especially one woman to another woman, like it spreads through the industry like wildfire. I mean, people have been fired for it.
Well.
Yeah, and guys to women too. So and we're kind of seeing that in a couple scenes and whatnot right now. But
Mm.
and that's kind of what I was saying earlier with like, don't feel like you're untouchable, because we're learning that no one's untouchable.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is be kind, because like whatever bridge you're going to burn because you feel like you need to put yourself forward before anyone else, like it comes back around.
Hmm. Well, that's I think good advice on the day to day as
Hmm.
well. So generally, I think the a lot of people have kind of come to the conclusion that generally being cool and nice has gotten them to a lot of places, and that they've seen the disasters, and they yeah, I've not talked to someone who's had a disaster. Maybe that'll be a goal of this podcast to be like, hey,
Yeah.
you were just kicked out of the scene. Tell me what you did wrong. But yeah, it does seem to be the one of the secrets to success. So with that, I want to give this, to anything you want to talk about, anything you want to say to the people out there working in the industry, or just a shout out to what you're doing currently.
Yeah, I mean, really, right now, I am focusing on getting Tavern launched. The light is at the end of the tunnel. We're just kind of tying up back end stuff on the development side. But I'm doing a lot of biz dev, and I am so excited to launch it because it really gets me excited when talent are like, I'm so excited to finally have a place where I can put myself out there more. Um, you know, and it's not a lost space anymore. We can kind of, even if I'm taking myself out of the hosting scene to be able to build this, like, to know that it's helping so many other people means a lot. So
I hope it's hugely successful. I really look forward to seeing how that works out and like fits into the scene as well. So it would be completely
mhm,
awesome if people, yeah, I think when I had this with Juked a little bit, they also wanted to create something bit unique, very almost homegrown, but still very much known
mhm.
across the industry. Um, and sometimes you see that and you're just like, oh no, is it going to work out? And it has worked out so far as I could see from
Mhm.
them. So I can hope that
I
this
think they've made
works out as
they've
well.
made the right pivots for sure. I like what Juked is doing, and I like the team behind it too. So it's really good to know that, like, they're still you know staying true to themselves, and the community that they have is great. So
Yeah. I think it's nice to see that there still can be improvements, that this, like,
Yeah.
their idea is not a lost cause, right? To create a
Right.
better space for esports conversations and organization, and paying attention to it is not a lost cause like it might have been thought of after some guy in 2015 tried to, so I really hope that it's very successful. I look forward to following the announcement and whatnot. So thank you for coming on
Oh my
to
God.
Caster
No.
Calls.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a very fun conversation. Thank you guys for watching out there. If you would like to support the Patreon, it is patreon.com/zombiegrub. And we do have some special shout outs for a few people who go above and beyond in their support of it. So thank you to Nick, Vinny, Stephen, E.T., Ravi, and CuddleBunny, as well as to Shayne for co-producing the podcast, and Barrett for helping the organization, reaching out and all that good stuff. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you again, Brittany. And I look forward to seeing you guys back for episode 56. Bye.